It's Thursday, June 19th. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. Lots to get through here. Trump's decision expected soon. Blanchet calls out the Prime Minister. The Carneys keep the federal employees busy, and the government asked to think first. Liberal-appointed senator goes all Karen, and Liberal tax cut fails to deliver on its promise, and Alberta and Saskatchewan unite. All that and a lot more in the Really Big Show. With me, Ian Burns, our managing editor, all the way out there in the nation's capital. Great weather here in the Okanagan, super blue skies, and looking like a beautiful day here in the Okanagan. How are things looking out of the nation's capital?
Not beautiful. It's humid and cloudy and chance of showers, so it's pretty bad again.
Cloudy with a chance of meatballs around the Parliament building.
Yeah.
Yeah, cloudy with a chance of meatballs. There you go. The big thing that everybody's watching, Trump's decision expected soon on whether the United States gets involved in that conflict between Israel and Iran. We're going to play a small clip here first.
Contributed to that change, how you got to where you are in making your decision now?
Well, I think it started the first night. I mean, that first night was devastating, and it really knocked the one side off, as you know. It was a devastating evening, day, and it pretty much proceeded that way. I have a meeting in the war room in a little while, situation room, as some people call it. So we're going to meet. We're going to see. We're in the midst of it's a terrible thing. I hate to see it. I hate to see all that death, so much death and destruction. But death primarily is what I hate to see.
Does that mean you haven't made a decision yet on what to do?
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, you know, because things change. I mean, especially with war, things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. There was no reason for this to be a war. There was no reason for Russia, Ukraine. A lot of wars there was no reason for. You know? You look right up there, I don't know, see the Declaration of Independence, and I say, I wonder if the Civil War, it always seemed to me maybe that could have been solved without losing 600,000 plus people.
Now, Israel also calling for Iran's top leader for the death of him. They say he should not continue to exist after the hospital strike. And this could well be the biggest decision, they're saying, of Trump's presidency this term.
Yeah, it could be the biggest decision that any president makes in the history of the United States if it goes wrong. Yep. But to answer his question there, could the Civil War in the US have been prevented without 600,000 Americans dying? The answer is yes, of course it could. If the North had let the South be an independent country, could have happened. But I mean, it's kind of the level that he's operating on is just so low and childish and ridiculous. It's hard to even engage with him. I mean, obviously a war could be prevented with Iran, couldn't it? If you just let them have a nuclear weapon, okay, but then you have new problems, don't you? It just seems so facile, and I don't know what he's playing at. I mean, obviously, I think most people have learned now that his primary tool for doing business is to be unpredictable. That's what for people to think he is anyway, and to generate mystery and uncertainty. He likes to do that, doesn't he? But it certainly seems to me, anyway, that he wants to. Yeah, he does. He wants to hit Iran, doesn't he? And he did it in his first term when he killed Soleimani, killed a very senior figure in the Iranian regime. He does act from time to time. I think he likes a cheeky airstrike, doesn't he? He would never want to go down with troops. But I think he's just dragging it out as long as he can because he would like to think that Iran will give up. And, they'll be afraid because they've moved a carrier group, haven't they, from Vietnam, I think it was, and they've moved it all the way around to the Middle East. They're trying to intimidate them.
Yeah, from the Southeast Asia seas into that area there. And then there has been some warnings from Russia and a little bit of noise from China on this as well, but not a lot.
I mean, Russia can't do a thing. Russia can't do anything. They can't even beat Ukraine. They're not going to spare anything to help Iran. So that's just a non-point, I think. China's a weird one because China could obviously help. China China basically funds Iran. China keeps Iran alive because they buy basically all of their
And
oil.
most of their oil comes from there.
Yeah.
So that could cause
Well,
some
most
grief
of Iran's
for
oil, I think it's like 95% of all of Iran's oil, which is their primary
revenue.
moneymaker, yeah, goes to China. So you'd think China would be like red hot on this, but this, I guess it's not a fight that China wants to have. Maybe they're saving all of their energy for Taiwan. But I don't know. I mean, it's pretty tense, isn't it? Quite tense times. But I must say, Iran, they look feeble, don't they? They look so weak and pathetic that it's not what it used to be. I mean, back in the day when Bush and his set of psychopaths were gunning for Iran when they really wanted to attack Iran around sort of 2005, 2006, I think it was. Back then, Iran was like kind of scary, and it actually, people were genuinely afraid of that prospect. But I feel like Iran now is just crippled and feeble, and it's not the same prospect. And maybe that's what maybe Trump's quite sort of you know, enthusiastic about that prospect, that it's not actually going to be such a big deal. But obviously, there's a huge war going on within MAGA, within his movement, where you've got people like, obviously, the Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson thing is probably the best. If you want to learn about that divide, that's the best way to do it. Tucker Carlson being very opposed and Ted Cruz very in favor of attacking Iran. But even like, Tulsi Gabbard as well, because he brought together this anti-war coalition, consists of people like Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson. And now that he's threatening to maybe, make war on a foreign country there, the divide is becoming obvious, because there are still people within the Trump movement that are interventionists. So we're seeing like a domestic split there, which might end up being the most interesting thing associated with this drama.
One of the points you bring up there is Iran does not look that strong as it, like postures to be, because Israel won the skies rather quickly. So, I mean, Israel is saying it's flying its jets over Iran with little interference from the ground, and they have, basically took out their whole air force immediately.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that, in that war in Iraq that the Americans did. I think in 3 days they wiped out Iraq's air force and basically controlled the skies. And if you control the skies, I mean, you control a lot of things, right? Even the missiles that are being launched now against Israel, not a lot of them are making it through now, because obviously their firepower is diminished in that way too. And then there's this piece here from the National Post saying, because it's talking about some of the leadership fleeing, and guess where they're going to flee to, according to the National Post? Canada.
I don't think that's accurate.
I don't know. It's a National Post article. The first reading, it says, if Iran collapses, regime officials likely to flee to Canada.
That's an opinion. It's a lad, isn't it? It's a young fellow who lives in British Columbia. I can't remember his name now, but that's his column.
I would think Russia, it'd be more the destination for, or China even. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the Liberal government are capable of astonishing acts of self-sabotage and foolishness, and they do things that they don't need to do. They make unforced errors all the time and do really stupid things all the time. Like, we just got a breaking news alert come through, Champagne saying Canada's going to go right ahead with the digital services tax. Just for example, that's a way of shooting yourself in the foot with a shotgun. They do things like that all the time. They're really stupid, quite often.
Even worse. But Champagne.
But I don't think they're that stupid, is what I'm going to say. To allow the Iranian clerical mafia to come and live in Canada, I just don't think they're that stupid. But maybe I overestimate them.
But again, Fool of the Day, we do that every day now. Champagne, just as you said, campaigning to be the Fool of the Day again today. So there you go.
He's, don't challenge him unless you're serious, because he's the real deal when it comes to Fool of the Day.
And Blanchet has something to say about the Prime Minister here. We're going to play this clip.
And we are seeing that there has been no action on what seemed to be a crisis. Mr. Carney said this himself. No crisis, no Carney. I mean, after the election, he could have done something else, but he didn't talk about the crisis anymore. And the only result we're seeing is Mr. Trump's team meeting with Carney's team to try and save face. We'll get together and talk again in 30 days. Mr. Carney made some extremely costly commitments, legislation to protect the borders, which raises questions of ethics, I might add. And he abandoned the counter tariff supposedly because he could reach an agreement with Mr. Trump before the G7. And what he actually secured, without going back on any of the concessions that he'd already made, was 30 days. You know, getting 30 days from Mr. Trump is easy. He probably would have made the offer himself. So I'm sorry to have to say this, but Mr. Carney got nothing.
He's so much angrier in French, isn't he? I just would like to point that out. It's a different level. But I mean, he is just like, he's a bit of a crank, isn't he? And he's just like a malcontent. That's what he is. The best possible word to describe that man is malcontent. But on this occasion, he's right, I think, and it's hard to disagree. I think
we're going to come to the headlines later there that disagree with Blanchet, but from CTV. But we'll move on here, and then Brian Lilly put this piece out there and says, "Why don't we have a trade deal yet with the United States? Might be on our stances on dairy and the digital services tax." We should just said so, and that is one that definitely causing issues with the Americans, that digital services tax, as is the supply management stuff.
No doubt at all. And obviously another one was the military, and we hear all about that all the time. Carney's then now promised to fiddle with the books so that it looks like we spend 2% of our GDP on defense.
Yeah, moving stuff around.
Something that has upset the Americans, and therefore that's a concession. But when it comes to these two things, I don't know, the digital services tax, I don't quite understand what game they're trying to play there. I think it might be something to do with their attempts to control the media. They want to make sure that they have control of, or a kind of control. They have some kind of control over these gigantic companies that, are so important in our lives here in Canada. But the dairy thing, I mean, everybody knows that. That's just Quebec, isn't it? It's just, and a little bit Ontario, I guess. But I mean, that's just a way to stop Quebec from whining. Because if you did sacrifice the supply management, the previous gentleman, Mr. Malcontent, would probably get more MPs, and he would certainly scream very loudly, and the Liberals don't like that.
Yeah, and here's our friend Chrystia Freeland, friend of the show, today at the House Transport Canada, LeBlanc and Minister Addy. And I answered questions about the One Canadian Economy Bill. This is a nation-building plan, one that helps every region, every business, and every Canadian. We are working together to pass this crucial legislation to build one strong Canadian economy rather than 13. And then there's a Dan Elbus there with Philip Lawrence there, and I'm going to listen to what they have to say.
This is Dan Elbus. We just finished the Transport Committee tonight. I'm with my colleague Phil Lawrence. Phil, the bill we just went through was C5, and the government was trying to give itself a tremendous amount of power when it came to national interest projects, big projects. Could you maybe tell everyone what was in the bill and how much power that the government was trying to get and what we did about it?
Yeah, so in the Building Canada Act, what it had between the operation of 21, 22, and 23, it gave the government unfettered right to approve any project and to exempt any legislation for that project. In other words, every bill, including the Criminal Code, the Conflict of Interest Act, was able to be exempted from that. We didn't think that was right, so we put in place controls that made sure that, for example, the Conflict of Interest Act the projects would not be exempted from the Conflict of Interest Act. We want to make sure that while projects get built, we can hold Liberals accountable.
Well, we know that the Liberals keep having scandal after scandal for their violations of ethics, so it felt good that we were able to put forward the amendment and to have it supported.
Yeah, it's great to be fighting for Canadians and making sure that Liberals insiders don't get rich at the price of Canadian taxpayers.
Power. Who'd have thought that they wanted power?
It doesn't sound like much, though. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like, they got, one small win that might be insignificant at the end of the day, but because, the Liberals have not been held accountable for 10 years. So maybe this changes because the NDP isn't able to prop them up in committee, and the Blanchet and the Conservatives have a bit of a hammer there.
Yeah, it's a different parliament. I mean, the sort of almost near-death experience for the NDP has changed. It's changed the landscape, hasn't it? It's different. It's a different game now.
I think those committee hearings could be the weakness for the Liberals for sure, because Blanchet and Poilievre or Scheer right now have a lot more say as what's going on there, because the Liberals need to convince somebody to work with them in the committee stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty much right now. It's kind of like bill by bill, isn't it? Issue by issue. This is what I mean, and I've sort of I've been thinking this since we knew the result of the election. Like this is a weak government. There's no doubt about it. It's weaker than Trudeau's government, I would say, because the Trudeau government had the NDP on a leash. Yeah. It was effectively a majority government because of how servile the NDP was. But now they're out on their own. They have to negotiate every time. They're not particularly strong.
And the key thing is the NDP don't have a say in committee because they don't have official party status, and neither does Elizabeth May. Well, she's also busy talking with Jesus and solar panels, but she doesn't have a lot of say in the committee stuff too, right? We're getting bills passed and that, and also on hearings.
Yeah, it's true, and it's something that not a lot of people understand, that bills have to work their way through there. It's not just about the vote on the floor. That's just one part of the adventure. It has to go through committees and numerous readings and all the rest of it.
And that's how they shut down a lot of the investigations and hearings and that too, through committee. They, like the NDP and the Liberals just shut down and they would have done it again with the GC strategies thing as well. Do you know what I mean? If they had had the what they had in the old days with the NDP, just like rubber stamping everything they wanted.
Indeed, yeah.
But here, the federal employees kept busy managing all the conflicts that Prime Minister Carney and his wife have, because they were both paid by federal contractors prior to his January 15th run for Liberal Party leadership. So they knew how to access the till of the Canadian government. And so they're working very closely with the Prime Minister's office to manage all the conflicts he has declared. It'd be nice to see all that list, eh? So he was on the executive positions with Bloomberg, Brookfield Asset Management, Goldman Sachs, Pacific Investment Management Co., and Stripe. That's that retail payment firm. We use that as well. And his wife, Diana, is a senior advisor for the Eurasia Group, New York, a federal consultant in Terramera, and a Vancouver company that received $3.2 million in agriculture grants. And a lot of people were working for Eurasia Group that are now alongside Mark Carney, including Evan Solomon was working for Eurasia Group after he was, fired from CBC with his dealings with Mark Carney. He was working there. Gerald Butts working with Eurasia Group. The list is long, I think. And there's a few more. I don't have them right here at my disposal, but Eurasia Group is very much connected into this liberal landscape.
Yeah. It's kind of like an extension of the sort of the American liberal establishment, I suppose, isn't it? And I guess you could say it's transnational. But it's funny, isn't it, that she has all these grand jobs and all the rest of it. Like, what has she done in her career? Like, she's hardly a great, famous success as a person, is she? I guess it just landed in her lap.
But Brookfield Asset Management also has a lot of tentacles out there too, because they're involved in so many things, and it's a multinational. He chaired until January 16th. It's the largest commercial landlord in Toronto, owns Westinghouse Electric, and is a federal contractor. And Carney apparently holds 9.8 million in Brookfield stock options. So, you know, lots of potential conflicts. They also are in modular homes, and we've heard many, many things, obviously, in selling carbon credits, all kinds of things. So Brookfield Asset Management, and they moved to New York City under Mark Carney's signature as well.
Oh yeah, we forgot about that though, haven't we? That's not even something that we talk about anymore. Not important anymore.
Invest in Canada other than the corporate, and also are on the list for dodging $5 billion worth of taxes with a listing in the Cayman Islands there. And that bike shop, right? That's a nice little office they got there.
Good times, good memories.
And then this is another Holly Doan Blacklock story too. Internet misinformation is eroding Canadians' faith in government, says StatsCan. And then so this is a study that they're saying internet misinformation is eroding Canadians' faith in government. Stats Canada report said yesterday statisticians denied their research was sought by the cabinet to justify a third attempt at censoring legal content. Imagine that. The report was requested by the public authority. The study was drawn from public questionnaires. Of course, that's how we'll just make some bills with public questionnaires, right? And I'm sure that's going to turn out well, right? Conservative MP Rachel Thomas on June 13th complained cabinet attempted one piece of censorship legislation after another. A third attempt was feared, she told Commons. Freedom of expression is the foundation of every freedom. Without it, we cannot challenge bad ideas, question authority, or hold governments to account. We cannot protect the truth. But Prime Minister Carney on an April 10th campaign speech says he favored another attempt to regulate internet content. He said this, I remember this very well, this sort of pollution online that washes over our virtual borders from the United States. And on June 3rd, the Liberal appointee, Senator Chris Wells, announced a group of interested senators would seek internet regulations.
And that senator also said, Canada must get tougher on hate. What does that mean? And it must send an unequivocal message that hate and extremism will never be tolerated in this country. I want to buy these people a dictionary. Look at the word extremism in the dictionary. It includes people like Stephen Guilbeault. And I'm not saying that to have a go at Stephen Guilbeault. He is an extremist when it comes to environmentalism, as is, you know, Greta Thunberg or somebody like that. An extremist is somebody that goes to the furthest edge of a point and advocates the sort of maximalist position. You know, are you going to criminalize that? So Greta Thunberg, Stephen Guilbeault, they're going to be criminalized. And I also don't understand this, where it says, if you look at the third paragraph here, the questionnaire defined misinformation as news or information that is verifiably false or inaccurate. The sharer of misinformation may or may not be aware that it is misinformation. So that means CBC, CTV, Global News, Canadian Press, Globe and Mail, National Post, Toronto Sun, every news organization you've ever heard of in Canada is guilty of that. Are they all going into the incinerator? It just makes no sense. It's the vagueness. And this is the problem that I have with Mark Carney. Leads from the top in this sense. He doesn't speak English very well. He doesn't speak clear English. And the consequences of not speaking English well when it comes to policy, you land in this kind of problem where nothing is defined, nothing is clear, nothing's concrete or material or certain. And in that world, it basically boils down to who's in power, they decide. So what is hatred? I'm going to decide what hatred is. I've got power, I'll decide. You're screwed. You don't want to be in a country like that, do you? You don't want to live in a system like that, where the laws are so vague that they declare war on an abstraction, and then they decide who is and isn't guilty of that. You'd think that we would have learned over the millennia where that kind of thinking takes us.
And here's another one. Federal managers who spend billions on consultants are now required to sign an oath stating they thought about it. What is that? They spend billions and just like they have to sign a piece of paper and say, yeah, I thought about it and I'm going to go with it again. just have to say, because what does that say? That they weren't thinking about it before? That they're paid these enormous salaries and they didn't engage their brain before? They just gave all that money to McKinsey and Co. Parliamentarians complained spending on consultants averaged $25 billion a year, even as the public service payroll grew to 413,000 employees. So we hired more federal employees, yet we increased our use of consultants. Like, what are the employees doing?
And then, sorry, just to go back again to where we were, the previous one, which is about undermining Canadians' faith in government. Misinformation, it says. That's all misinformation's fault. Bad old misinformation. But it's got nothing to do with this. It's got nothing to do with extraordinary incompetence and stupidity on the part of the people that govern our lives, which is what this, I think, is indicative of. These people are so low grade. They are so stupid. I wouldn't trust them to run an ice cream stall. Here they are in charge of billions of dollars. That's what undermines faith in the Canadian government. I mean, needless to say.
McKinsey and Co. received a total of, it's a New York company as well, McKinsey and Co., an advertising agency, a consulting agency. They received a total of $200 million in contracts from 2015. $200 million. And they say treatment of McKinsey was symptomatic. What transpired with McKinsey is symptom of a broken system. And it says my office is identifying many of the same issues year after year. So McKinsey, obviously, and we talked about lobbyists yesterday. I mean, man, it's in their best interest to lobby like crazy. Look at the money that the Canadian Liberal government has been shelling out to consultants. And now this is the solution. This is the solution because Poilievre was going to cut consulting. The Liberals' solution is you need to sign an oath before you spend that money.
Look at that.
I thought about it.
All that money from given to McKinsey since 2015. On the other hand, look how much life has improved in Canada since 2015. So obviously McKinsey are doing a good job, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they've convinced everybody that we sacrificed our economy for the climate change agenda with Stephen Guilbeault leading that. So they've convinced many Canadians of that, and that we need to, there's so much, they've done so much for the economy and Mark Carney was the economic advisor as well. So yeah, so a bang up job. But this I think is going to be really, really strong. Like, I mean, this is going to work. Like, we'll check back in a year and see how well it worked. Just that oath, they need to sign that. Because what does it say that they weren't thinking before? They need to sign an oath that says they're going to think about it, that they act well, that they thought about it. That's it. That's the go forward. Think about it.
It's a bit like, I don't know if you've seen this, but banks nowadays, when you want to transfer some money, I don't know if it's above a certain amount or something, or if it's like an e-transfer to somebody that you've not sent it to before. It pops up and it says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And it's like, and then the bank they're like, "Oh well, we did ask you, and you said yes." So this is like a bureaucrat's idea of how to solve a problem, isn't it? And this is why bureaucrats are universally despised.
I have a friend that said he went to the bank and wanted to withdraw $10,000 in cash, and they made him do a bunch of forms and ask him what he was going to use it for. He said, "I have a bad gambling habit," and they gave it to him.
Well, there you go.
There you go. And then here's the Liberal appointed Senator Kim Pate going all Karen, and she's questioning why Donald Trump was permitted to step foot in Canada and attend the G7. She pointed out regulations under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act that prohibit travel by foreigners with criminal convictions. Well, she should probably use that for the immigration system, and instead of going all Karen on, disallowing the most powerful country in the world to come to Canada, that we're begging on. I mean, you looked at Carney's reaction with Trump, begging on hand and knee there for favor from the United States. But, she says she wants to keep him out. And she said she's heard from a lot of people, though.
Who is it? Who is it that's banging this drum? I mean, this is just so indulgent. This is such self-indulgent garbage, isn't it? I mean, what are you trying to achieve here? Do you want to break diplomatic relations with the United States? Is that your objective here? Is that smart?
Yeah,
well,
maybe.
I mean, Christ.
Maybe somebody should ask her seriously where our military protection comes from, especially in this day and age with all these wars. Where our military protection comes from. Is it the 40-year-old jets that we have that half don't work? Is it from them? Or the 4 submarines that we have only half work and they're diesel submarines? Is it from there? Or where is it that she derives her protection so she can say this nonsensical garbage?
But fundamentally, it's just a waste of time. Yeah. Like the reason that he came to Canada is because he's the leader of the world's most powerful country. The end. Why do you need a further explanation? Just shut up. Like, join us in reality.
Yeah, I know. She's forgetting to wear her mask while she's in cabinet there, I think.
She wanted to be heard. It was too important a point to make.
And then Don Davies is auditioning for Fool of the Day. We're going to play a clip from Don Davies here.
I'm honored to rise today to introduce the National Renewable Energy Strategy Act. I thank my colleague from Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie for seconding this legislation and all his work to protect our environment. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has been clear that we must cut global greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050 to avert catastrophic global climate change. The time for action is now. That means implementing solutions for clean energy and transitioning away from fossil fuels. While we do this, we must ensure that workers are not left behind. Jobs in Canada's clean energy sector are projected to grow by nearly 50% by 2030, and the industry's GDP contribution is on track to reach $100 billion by the end of this decade. This legislation would accelerate our transition to a clean energy future by requiring that the Minister of Natural Resources develop and implement a national strategy to ensure 100% of electricity generated in Canada comes from renewable energy sources by 2030. I call on all parliamentarians to support this vital initiative for our country and for our planet.
Do you get a headache listening to that? Like 5 years. 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
I'm sure they love hearing that in Alberta.
Yeah. And then he's talking about
it's literally not even possible. I mean, even if we moved over to a war economy or something like that to try and achieve that aim, it's not even possible. What are you talking about? Why are you wasting parliamentary time? Be serious.
Well, he's trying to get, I guess, win favor with the Liberals, I guess, and with Karen back there. Her name is Kim Pate, not Karen. I don't know.
I think what he's actually trying to do is to tap into that. There is a voting bloc in Canada, particularly where he's an MP in BC, obviously, but also in Quebec and some other places in the cities, who will vote for stupid things like this without even thinking about it. They won't even, these are the sort of people that hail the expert class, but they won't bother the expert class with a question of, is that actually possible? Will it actually make a difference to global temperatures? Oh no, well, I don't care. I'm still gonna ask for it though.
I'm sure this Don Davies is also going to stand up there and say how we need to unite Canada and work together and be a one nation as opposed to 13. And then in the same time expecting Alberta and Saskatchewan just to take a knee.
Well, this is beyond just those two provinces taking a knee. This would just completely cripple Canada. It would make everybody's life miserable, and it would achieve nothing, not a single thing in terms of global emissions. It would achieve nothing. And he submitted a bill. Why is he wasting time? Grow up.
Somebody should mention to him that he doesn't have official party status and that him and Elizabeth May should go out and talk about solar panels.
As long as it's related to Jesus, then I'll listen, because that's funny.
Hey, we want to make sure that we're not making fun of Jesus. We just don't think Jesus is talking to Elizabeth May.
Yeah, I don't think that Jesus was all that hot on solar panels. I don't think he mentioned them once, actually. Having read the New Testament a few times, couldn't pick up solar panels in there.
And I'm pretty sure Elizabeth May's name didn't make it in there as well. The Toronto police says that they've got 20 people arrested and 111 charges laid in this tow truck wire trap investigation. We're going to listen to the chief here.
Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us here today. We're here today to share the results of a joint forces operation into violent and criminal acts linked to the tow truck industry. I'm joined today by various officers representing our partners in this investigation. Acting Superintendent Dave Mason of the Serious and Organized Crime Unit at Durham Regional Police Service, Inspector Marco Napoleoni of the Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau of the York Regional Police Service, and Chief Superintendent.
Actually, he's just going through a lot of stuff there, but you know, that thing is we won't like pain everybody listening to the whole thing. You can go find that and listen to that yourself. This
Tow
thing
truck
is
wars.
got deep roots, though.
Yeah, there's a few industries that are kind of infested with organized crime. That's one of them. Another one, some might argue, is related to the ports.
Yeah, a lot of people would say that for sure. And then here's why Quebec's going to find itself out of favor here. The Quebec government has announced that they will begin incarcerating inmates on the basis of their biological sex, ending the current policy of housing inmates based on gender identity. Taking some.
This Canadian press reported on this, and they referred to it as anatomical sex. That's such an interesting way to phrase that. Just the lengths to which, again, to go back to language, the lengths to which people will go to try and preserve their mad ideologies, you know.
And then there's another one here. This is that big promise that the Liberals made to Canadians and said Poilievre's promise was nothing but smoke and mirrors. And they promised, what, about $860, was it? What was it that they promised? $825 for families. Turns out it's about $280. Turns out falls way short. They're trying to make David Eby look good, I guess, because his $1,000 promise to British Columbians evaporated into thin air and absolutely zero. And this one is turning out to be about $280. Probably almost as good on the taco and tinsel tax GST break. Remember that one where if you bought a lot of taco chips and Christmas tinsel, you did okay as well. But Parliamentary Budget Office released its costing for the Liberal government's personal income tax cut to 14%. And the Carney Liberals like to talk a big game, but once again, they failed to deliver. And they said they would cut income taxes to $825, but the PBO said it'll only save about $90 this year. Canadians only save about $9 this year, $190 next year. That's about $15 a month. Well, almost 16, right? Or about 4 cans of tuna. Why not, eh?
Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get 4 cans. I don't know how much beef you would get with that.
Where is the beef? Like, you're not buying beef for that, right?
But yeah, this is like, I mean, I don't want to sort of treat it too lightly because this is quite serious, I think. And again, let's go back again to that question, which is on everybody's lips these days. Everybody in the establishment wants to talk about how Canadians' confidence in institutions has been undermined. I know an institution called the Liberal Party of Canada that made so much noise about this money that everybody was going to get, this so-called middle-class tax cut, that the foolish media just reported on without even asking a single question. They literally called it the middle-class tax cut without even putting sort of speech marks around it. So the Liberal Party, it's not an exaggeration to say the Liberal Party won this minority government in part because of this promise. Turns out, here we are, been in power not that long, blink of an eye, and the first serious objective party to look at it, the budget officer, says no, it's a load of bollocks. It's not true. It's not even half of what they said.
And then we remember.
Do you think Mr. Liberal Party, maybe Chrystia Freeland, who I know listens, maybe she can relay this point? Do you think that's going to encourage Canadians to have faith in Canadian institutions? Because I don't, and I think that's a lot more serious than somebody posting a stupid tweet that contains what you consider to be misinformation.
And let's not remember our contender for Fool of the Day, Francois-Philippe Champagne, saying that they didn't have time to deliver a budget because they were focusing their attention on delivering that tax cut that Canadians needed. And here's the tax cut that fails to deliver as well. And maybe that's what we could put underneath his name, his tagline. Francois-Philippe Champagne fails to deliver.
Champagne, he's just got buckets full of faith in Canadian institutions. He's just thrown it. Everybody's getting a bit, aren't they? It's just like, what a genius he is.
I think his biggest accomplishment so far, I think, is that he's actually made Chrystia Freeland look competent.
Well, he's made Chrystia Freeland feel like a breath of fresh air when it's like, when you've been listening to him for an hour and it's like, now here's Chrystia Freeland. It's like, oh, thank God, Chrystia. I never thought I'd feel that way.
We are friendly with you, Chrystia. You know, we're also happy that you're a fan of the show.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
And then here's Danielle Smith and Scott Moe. They say that Alberta and Saskatchewan are united, and she did this tweet out there. Thank you to Premier Scott Moe for your strong leadership and shared vision. Today in Lloyd's Minister, we stood together with government caucuses from both provinces and called for a real national change. And then so they are, they said they have a strong identity and a great deal of commonality. And, they both want the scrapping of the emissions cap, and they want taking off the toxic label, give it to plastic products. And then they said they were here as a united caucus because we're decided that enough is enough. Most of Canada's top priorities should be building an energy corridor that connects the Northwest Coast to Hudson Bay, allowing Canadians to access European and Asian markets. And, so I don't know, like when you see the Don Davies of the NDP putting forward his thing, this is just a literal slap in face to the golden gooses of Canada, golden geese, I guess you could say, of Canada, Saskatchewan and Alberta.
This is a Canadian Press article, by the way, that we're sort of reading this from. And I'm looking at it here, and they didn't mention what is by far the most interesting thing that Danielle Smith said, which was right at the end of the press conference. Maybe they zoned out at the end or something like that. But she made a comment about Quebec, which was quite sort of amusing. And it was along the lines of, because she was asked, can you explain what you meant when you said enough is enough? And she said, what I meant by that is, it no longer will we accept Quebec saying no to projects like this while demanding equalization payments, basically. But she said it in her sort of Smithian fashion, and she just said it's about time for Quebec to take advantage of its own natural resources so that it can pay for its own projects rather than expecting Alberta to pay for it through equalization. And I just thought that was interesting. It's funny for one thing, and you don't usually hear politicians speak as frankly as that, but it's also quite interesting because I think it's an indication of where her mind is, which is very important right now for the future of Canada. And it suggests that she's growing impatient, I think it's fair to say, because she's no longer, sometimes she's very diplomatic, but she wasn't there. She's clearly running out of patience.
Yeah, the quote there is, and I think this is Mo, we have months, not years for this work to happen. Like they want something done now. I mean, Danielle Smith has been very vocal in saying that their patient wears thin on this, So there you go. And then Senator Denise Batters, we're going to play a small clip from here. This is for her talking to our friend Francois-Philippe Champagne.
Several more months, but we will be waiting. Minister Champagne, part of Bill C-4 will finally repeal your government's consumer carbon tax, and to this I say hallelujah. We in the Conservative caucus have relentlessly pushed for this for many years. In fact, I first pressed your Liberal government about carbon tax by asking questions to then Minister Goodale in our old Senate chamber in Centre Block 7.5 years ago. On the other hand, Minister, you have a very long history of supporting the Liberal carbon tax. Your predecessor, Minister Freeland, voted for the carbon tax at least 43 times, and I'm sure your voting record is very similar. And your pro-carbon tax quotes, my goodness, when you were asked about the cost of your carbon tax last year, you said, quote, Canadians are proud of the Environment Minister because he is standing up for what is right for this country, while we have the climate deniers on the other side. They want to see the planet burn. We want to act for our children. We want to act for future generations, unquote. And you contended, quote, 8 out of 10 will get get more money. We will fight for climate change and we will fight for our children, unquote. And last March, you told the media this, putting a price on pollution is, quote, the right thing to do. This is an investment in the future. The plan is working. It's going to bring more money in the pockets of Canadians, and we're going to continue to do that, unquote. Now, Minister, I want to know how much money, how many billions of dollars your Liberal government took out of the pockets of Canadians for the carbon tax you charged them for 6 years. You've been the minister for several months, so you must know the number. How much is it?
Madam Senator, I'm pleased that you have all these quotes. I mean, actually, I'll look at the answer to remind myself of all of these things that were said at the time. I would say 6 weeks have changed the world, Senator. I think these 6 weeks have seen a very different world than the one we had before. And I would say you should be pleased to see a government that when you see that the circumstances have changed, you need to change course. That's what Canadians told us. You know, we just had something called an election recently. We went out and we listened to Canadians, and I think in our democracy it's a good thing. You know, Canadians have told us that we needed to change course. Obviously, there's still concern about climate change, and we heard that from your colleagues. This is the challenge of our generation and probably of our century. But at the same time, there's different policies to achieve the goal that we have as humanity. And I think you should be pleased, and your colleagues in the House were very pleased to see that we have answered to one concern that was expressed by Canadians. And I would say, I think it's a good thing that we could realize and they say there's different policy choice to achieve the big objective we have. And we decided in this bill to make sure that in law we would repeal the carbon pricing for consumers. And I think this was applauded also by your colleagues in the House in saying this is a measure that's going to help Canadians. And it's all about affordability. You have to start from the basis. You always ask the why, or at least I ask always the why. The why is affordability. Reduce taxes, give a chance to people to get their first home, reduce also the cost when it comes to carbon pricing. And I think that suite of measure is helping our nation to be more resilient. And we have heard Canadians, and I think that's a good thing in a democracy that you listen to your constituent from across the nation, which have told us we agree that there's a bigger challenge, which is climate change, but there's different policies you can adopt. Give us a break. Give us a break now. We need that in light of everything that's happening in the world now.
Well, I certainly look forward to receiving the actual number from you. Perhaps you can consult with your officials and get back to us.
There you go. Just a magic eraser, like the 6 weeks, and then just like erase all the stuff they did wrong, and just like that's it. You know what I mean? Just like that, eh?
I was gonna say my like, you know, my mind's eye, my inner monologue was saying to me there that a plurality of Canadians heard that and said, yes, please, another 5 years of that, please. But then I've sort of corrected myself. That's wrong. They didn't hear that because this man, Champagne, didn't campaign at all, really. He didn't speak. He didn't do anything. It was all Mark Carney. And it just kind of, it's just like, because he said, you may have heard of something called an election we just had. It is like patronizing, strange little way. And it's kind of, my mind goes back to that election because what a weird election it was, where these like liberal heavyweights, I suppose you have to call him that, don't you? Like him and Chrystia Freeland and all the rest of the big boys, they just disappeared, didn't they? For that entire period of that election, it was just all about Mark Carney making promises that are already starting to unravel. So that's my sort of primary takeaway from that, not his boring waffle as he tries to avoid answering a question, but rather the fact that he was hidden away in some closet somewhere for a few months so that they could win the election. And I think when you listen to that, you see why, don't you?
And then here's a winery out there in Ontario. They're saying they're trying to ship wine across this one economy, not 13, and still can't get it done. And so they're wondering why these small issues are still in place. That the government's adding this 89% markup to wine. Again, just as a question as to like what has been accomplished in the Liberals so far, and then getting ready to take their break here because you know they have worked really hard. But the question is, what have they done?
Well, they haven't replaced the people. They've only replaced one, really, which is Justin Trudeau's been replaced with Mark Carney. but they haven't replaced the people, and they're still talking about the same things. It's still the same language. It's still the same, the same problems in the game of whack-a-mole that is trying to govern Canada. The same problems pop up. Quebec pops up. The First Nations pop up. The environmentalists pop up. It's the same things going on, and they haven't really, it seems to me, figured out a particularly good plan of how to get around that, other than this quite mysterious bill that's going to give them special powers that they can use from time to time for certain projects.
We got this little clip here from Sam Cooper, who does a lot of investigative journalism, and is talking about Chinese interference in our elections. And also Kash Patel of the FBI put it out that there was a lot of Chinese interference in the U.S. election. But we're going to listen to this clip here on the election interference here.
The election interference story does connect stunningly to fentanyl, to money laundering. My argument, which is well-founded, is that, look, again, the Chinese Communist Party has seen Canada as a weak spot, and as we're learning, America as well. The story just broke this week that they're mailing IDs and licenses so that Chinese students could vote for a certain candidate, allegedly in the 2020 election. But they've gone beyond that, already proven in Canada. They are busing students into certain ridings with high Chinese migrant populations. And in one very well-known case, the students were told, hey, you need to nominate someone for this seat that's going to sit in Canada's parliament. If you don't, you're going to lose your right to your student visa in Canada. You could be under threat. Your family could be under threat. So here's the key theme here.
Indeed. And I mean, possibly the more interesting question is, why does almost all of this election interference from China, from the Chinese Communist Party, why does its apparent objective always seem to be to elect the Liberal Party and representatives of the Liberal Party? Why did the Chinese Communist Party effectively endorse Mark Carney? What's that all about? Can we talk about that? Is anybody ever going to have a conversation about that?
Yeah, I would say that there's, and we're going to get to some BC stuff later here too, and we're going to see some of that stuff as well. Yeah, and then this is the largest, we talked about this yesterday, the largest labor union in Ontario is organizing a rally in support of Iran this weekend. The Iranian regime that, outlaws unions, tortures strikers, executes LGBTQ, rapes women, assassinates political. And this is weird that this CUPE is actually like vocally supporting this. It just seems odd.
I mean, it's the only thing I can imagine is that it's simply anti-Western, and a lot of unions have been hijacked by extremists on the left that despise the Western world. I can only imagine that it has something to do with that strange hijacking, which has occurred not just in Canada but everywhere in the US as well.
And we won't spend much time on this. Actually, we'll go by because we already talked about the Iranian strike on the hospital here. But we're going to play, no, it's just this one here. A computer scientist confirms CBC slanted coverage of the election using innovative technological tools. A Regina computer scientist examined CBC Radio Canada's 2025 election coverage. No surprise there that it was biased, right? But here's experts saying it was biased, right?
I mean, God bless them for trying to get objective verification of it, but I think you nailed it there. Like, who's surprised? We're not having that conversation, are we, as a society? Like, is CBC biased? Like, no, we're not having that conversation. Obviously, it's biased. Everybody who thinks about these things in a serious way can see that it's a very biased news organization, and it very much prefers liberal left-wing causes. Just go on the website, turn on the channel, listen to it on the radio, listen to the things that they cover and the way in which they cover them. It's very obvious. In fact, I would say, I read all kinds of newspapers, left and right wing, and I read The Guardian, which is probably the most famous left wing newspaper in the world. Very, very left wing, like more left wing than the New York Times. And I would say that the CBC is more obviously biased than The Guardian. That should tell you everything that you need to know, I think.
Yeah, not to be outdone though, CTV. We got a couple of posts here from CTV as the NDP are pushing their climate agenda, and CTV piling on here. Scientists warn that greenhouse gas accumulation is accelerating and more extreme weather will come. And another one, scientists warn climate change could cut crop yields up to a quarter. North America would be hit the hardest. And I think we did a story, actually, a CP story, says that 1 in 4 Canadians affected by extreme climate.
That's just a leisure poll, isn't it? Yeah. But that's an interesting poll because that's down quite a lot, actually. That's down about 10 percentage points on last year. So the real story there is like considerably fewer people care about climate change now, apparently, or fear that they're going to be affected by it. Well, as for this thing with North America, I've never heard. I keep abreast of a lot of climate change news and discussion, and I can't quite remember coming across the idea that North America is going to suffer in particular, unless it's like the Dust Bowl in the US or something like that. But as for Canada, I think generally speaking, it's one of those awkward facts. Canada would be one of the countries to benefit the most from an increase in the temperature, world temperature. There are a few other countries. Russia's another one, but I mean, I don't think this is particularly relevant to a Canadian audience.
Absent in the G7 up until Donald Trump left was talk about climate change, and it was they tried to put together a statement there, but Donald Trump kiboshed it as well. So usually at the G7 there's a lot of stuff that comes out on that, but and then again with that, Saskatchewan minister says as many as 30 people under investigation for arson related to the wildfires.
Oh, it's the same story every time, isn't it now? Every wildfire season, it's the same story. Human caused, and in some cases arson. It's outrageous, really, isn't it? If these people are intending to start wildfires, I mean, it's one thing to commit arson, like set fire to someone's car or something like that, because you don't like that person and it accidentally causes a forest fire. That's one thing. But to actually go in there and say, I'm going to start a massive wildfire, to do that with intention, it's craziness, isn't it? It's pretty much almost like a kind of terrorism, isn't it? It's a very, very serious crime.
Some of it's been linked to climate activism as well, though, and the headlines that come out after,
foreign actors even.
Doug Ford in a little bit of hot water because he says he treats First Nations like gold, but they keep coming hat in hand, so he's taking a little bit of flack for that.
It's really interesting because it's kind of a taboo in Canadian society, Canadian politics, Canadian media. I say kind of a taboo. It's a massive taboo. It's a gigantic taboo. It's almost like he's committed blasphemy. He's blasphemed against the religion of reconciliation, or whatever you want to call it. But, this is the thing. He's kind of like a wheeler dealer, isn't he? He's kind of like a businessman, and he's quite pragmatic. And that's his whole shtick. It's like, well, folks, with his little cadence, like he's trying to sell you a car or something. And he's gone in there with that approach, and I don't think he realizes that he's blasphemed extraordinarily. But what he said was like, his central argument was, you can't be sitting there in these on your territories with like enormous amounts of natural resources under your feet, including gold. He said, it's like literally gold mines possible underneath your feet, and then saying, no, I don't want that, and then coming to the provincial government, the federal government, and saying, give me money. Oh, in his words, by the way, give me money. I mean, that's him approaching this from a pragmatist perspective. But I don't think it's going to work very well for him because, as I say, it's a taboo, and he has committed the sin of blasphemy.
And this is our immoral part of the show here, where we talk about Bill C-18. Stephen Gabot says it's immoral to talk about Bill C-18, but we're going to be immoral about it anyway. But free the media, free the press, and stop government funding, and allow us to operate with the audience we earned. We want our Facebook and our Instagram back. But here's some not so free media. At the G7 summit, this is a CTV new one, Trump got the spotlight, but it's Carney got the win. Again, I failed to see the win that he got. And then the CP, they piled on there. And Carney returns to Ottawa after a fruitful summit with G7 leaders. And then you and I talked about this yesterday. We're very puzzled as to see where the win was, but other than the India thing. And then I think this is a repeat. We're not going to put that up there again. But yeah, so that's the Online News Act. We're just going to beat that drum, and we're going to show you examples of the media not being very honest with you.
It's just purely subjective. That's the problem. That's like an opinion article masquerading as a news article.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ludicrous. At G7 summit, Trump got the spotlight, Carney got the win. That's an opinion. That's an editorial.
Yeah.
I mean, that's grotesque, really, isn't it? I'm just going to acknowledge that Ian said that the Dust Bowl was also in the US, in the prairie. Sorry, also in Canada, in the prairies, which is right. Yeah, I didn't mean to diminish that because it was quite serious, wasn't it, in Saskatchewan and so on.
So here's a thing. This is headlines all over the United States. It says the DNC is broke. Inside the swirling chaos there, nobody's giving them money, and a lot of people are putting the string theory together and saying that U.S. aid was where the money was coming from because they cut off the U.S. aid and it cut off the funding for the DNC. Imagine that. Imagine that if you could have a government that actually funds a certain Liberal Party or a certain party. If you could have what a pipeline, right?
Yeah, I mean that's quite a claim to make. I don't know if there's real evidence of that, but
well,
they were terrible with money. Just look at how they spent money with the botched campaign of Kamala Harris. They were so stupid with their money. It's not a surprise that they're bloody bankrupt.
You talked about the Oprah Winfrey reference there yesterday when it said money for you and money for you and money for you. Well, they did that with Oprah, and they're just money for you, Oprah. $2 million bucks.
Literally, yeah.
For Harpo Productions. There you go. This one here, we talked about this yesterday as well, where Elon Musk was called onto the carpet by the Brits over this when he says, he was calling for that investigation into the rape gangs there, and now all of a sudden it's happening, right?
It was actually, he's one of the most important figures in making that happen. It's undeniable. Yeah. And all the people that were getting on their high horse, Ed Davey is an absolute imbecile. He's a fool. He's a ridiculous person who leads a third party called the Liberal Democrats, which is just like, it's just for posers, basically. It's not a serious party. But other people like Jess Phillips, she's in the Labour Party, she made an absolute fool of herself in attacking Elon Musk, and he targeted her.
Yeah, and there was one in the European Union that was a representative of the European Union that said that Elon Musk needs to be arrested, and I think even they talked about it even in Britain about how they needed to go to the U.S. and arrest him. And then I think there was a lot of backlash there, and says, yeah, I think you tried that in 1776.
Well, it's a bit more. It's a difficult analogy, that one, to rationalize. But I mean, certainly, Muskie boy can only look at this as an enormous victory, even though he hasn't talked about it in ages. But he set it off. He set the sort of chain reaction off, and it's ended in all of his enemies, including that Jess Phillips person, being vanquished and humiliated.
Yeah, he definitely stuck his nose into it, and like a lot of people credit him for saving the internet as well, and by buying X, and not because all the platforms were censored, and that even comes from Mark Zuckerberg when he said that he was forced to censor, and then
he changed his tune a bit, didn't he?
Yeah, and the same thing goes for the LA Times.
Did you see on Blue Sky? JD Vance went on Blue Sky
he got banned,
and got banned within like 10 minutes.
There you go, Blue Sky. I'm sure Blue Sky is going to be a huge success. A huge success.
Ban the vice president. That's the way to success, isn't it?
I went on there to look because one of our staff members wanted to put up Blue Sky, and so we do have an account for Blue Sky that does nothing. So there you go.
Surprised we haven't been banned.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we're posting this on there. And then this is just a Zero Hedge, again, another guy that they say is an extremist. But he says if Iran's oil is cut off, China will pay the price because that's where they get most of their oil. So, well, I mean, they could turn to Russia, I guess, and it'll be a boom for Russia, right? Another win for Russia, because guess what Russia has that everybody wants? Yep, energy. Vodka and vodka, but energy. I guess you could burn vodka in some engines as well. But let's move on to BC. Let's move on to BC politics here and BC news, local news as well. I had in here yesterday Macklin McCall, MLA for Kelowna, West Kelowna, or West Kelowna Peachland, I should say, not Kelowna, West Kelowna Peachland, and he is the emergencies critic as well. And we talked about healthcare. I advise you to watch that interview. He's supporting Gavin Dew's call for the resignation of the CEO, Susan Brown of Interior Health. And they're holding a town hall here in Kelowna on July 2nd. We're going to live stream that, or we're working on the mechanics of that. But they've invited the health minister, Josie Osborne, to attend, and we got a statement from Josie Osborne. It doesn't sound like she's going to attend, but I imagine maybe that political pressure will mount, because she's called on people not to politicize this. And what we talked about there is, isn't that what a democracy is? Like, the community spoke out, and then the opposition is giving it voice, and as is the media giving it voice. But you know, the health minister and the CEO of Interior Health said that the media's sensationalizing it, and Josie Osborne says that we should work together now. But I asked him if the NDP asked him to sit on any committees to talk about health, if they asked for any help, and he said the answer was no. Imagine that.
But it's so interesting, that, isn't it, that the use of that word or that term, politicizing, and that as a pejorative and a naughty verb that's applied to people. It's very similar, I think. It's in the same genre as this talk of misinformation and spreading hate and things like that. It's all just very vague stuff, and the ultimate purpose of it is to silence criticism, isn't it? I mean, there's no other way to look at it.
To hold back accountability, because nothing like being held accountable, right? And the NDP have a few pots on the stove that are boiling over. Like, they have a few pots that are boiling over, and it's really not helping them look competent in what they're doing. And this one here with Interior Health and health in general, because here's another one. This is Brad Zubik, the chief of staff for John Rustad. He says it's not just Kelowna Hospital that's in crisis. The reality is that every hospital and every health region is on the verge of crisis under the NDP management. And we've seen that doctor that was punished there in Fraser Valley for speaking out, and she's now suing the government and the health authority there.
They are in real hot water, aren't they? I think it looks inevitable that either there's going to be a leadership change in this parliament, or that there's going to be an early election, I'd say. It doesn't look like this. The NDP are going to survive. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like they can. I don't think they've got the energy to do it. You know.
They just don't seem to have any answers. They're unwilling to admit they're wrong on so many things, and they're unwilling to address the pots on the stove that are boiling over. These pots are boiling over. This is from many, and this is, you know, Macklin says, you know, this is not a problem that started here last week, right? These are problems that have been festering, and now they're boiling over, and these aren't the only ones. And then we look at here, this one is like, they're getting a lot of grief on this one too, and this is actually, you know, really disheartening. And it's you know, they cut off the funding for this young lady here. Her drug coverage is to be discontinued, and you know, and this is a child that's terminal, and this is Harman Bangu as well putting out this post. It's outrageous. We're supposed to have free healthcare in Canada. How does the Minister Osborne sleep at night knowing she's the head of the government decision that is pulling life support from a 9-year-old girl? And this isn't compassion. This isn't care. It's cruelty dressed up as policy. And you know, the biggest problem that the NDP is having, they've run out of money. They ran out of money because they chased investment from the province. Talk to Canfor. Talk to many of the companies that can invest in here. All they have left to go after is the taxation of the middle class. So they're chased companies away. They talk about there's no investment in British Columbia, and they fail to look in the mirror and ask why that is. Why is that? Forestry used to be number one.
It's the same conversation that's being had nationally, isn't it? It's that growth has not been prioritized, and as a consequence, there's less cash around for projects, for health, for all sorts of things.
The number one thing they can look to, forestry used to be number one in British Columbia. And I did so many stories on it, interviewed the forest minister, interviewed all these people, and this is far before Trump. and they said that BC is uninvestable. And the response from the recent event that I attended with the finance minister, oh, it's all Trump's fault. That's not even, that is so disingenuous and not true. And that doesn't help companies say, oh, okay, if it wasn't just for Trump, then we'd start investing in forestry again in British Columbia.
And give you your $1,000 check that we promised.
and then we go back to the Airbnb policy, and then even British Columbians don't even want to invest in British Columbia. So there's
well,
that.
It's also the legal. I mean, it's the problems are so manifold, aren't they? There's the legal problem of like, whose land is this even? Because the way that they talk and the sort of deals they do with First Nations, why would you invest in BC if like the property that you acquire could change jurisdictions? Because this BC government has opened up a real can of worms with First Nation land claims.
They have made such a mess and made BC very unpalatable for many people. And then this is Rob Shaw, one of the guys that is really on the NDP reporter. He says he will not reverse his course on BC's ferries contracts with government, says he doesn't want, we talked about this yesterday, he doesn't want to see families waiting on the tarmac. But, Harman is also on this, right? He says, well, then scrap the industrial carbon tax. You can't rebuild our industry while punishing it. China doesn't have a carbon tax, so they get to operate cheaper than how do we compete? How do we compete? They have human rights violations with their people. They don't have an industrial carbon tax. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then we send the work there to take advantage of human rights violations and no industrial carbon tax. Does it make sense? I don't know.
What
Make it
also
make
doesn't
sense.
make sense on the BC ferries thing is BC is blessed with like an enormous bounty of natural gas, isn't it? And it's lots of ferries are powered by natural gas around the world, made by our friends like the Koreans. I think the Koreans are sort of specialize in that.
Yeah.
Why are these ones diesel that we're getting from China? It's just another thing. But I think the main thing, like Rob Shaw, him highlighting that thing about the tarmac. The main thing for me is, why is that selectively applied? It's like, no, we're not going to do the right thing here. We're not going to do the moral thing because I don't want X to occur. Why is that principle only applied to people waiting for ferries? Like we talked about that girl earlier, that tragic case of that girl. Those drugs that she needs, that she's trying to sort of continue using, costs, I think it's like $1 million a year or something.
800,000. Yeah.
I'm fairly sure that if you went to the right part of India or China or something like that, you could get a knockoff of that drug for a fraction of that price. You can do that. You can sort of like suspend the rules or your principles. You can do that again and again and again and again. And then you can just say, well, this thing is too important. It's possible to do that for everything. Why is EB he's only bringing forward this argument for this one thing? Why?
Yeah, I think we're going to reach out and see if we can get Harman Bangu on here as well, because he brought up another thing on Chinese steel. They used Chinese steel for the Patello Bridge, and now that project is delayed, over budget, and under scrutiny. There you go. Chinese steel contributed to delays in construction of Patello Bridge. There you go. Welding problems with steel from overseas creates headaches for local worker, increases expenses. Why are we using Chinese steel? I thought it was...
we got a surplus of our own.
That we want to sell to the Americans. But why would we buy it, right? Why would we buy it? And then Rob Shaw, I guess he's a little bit like us. We should invite him on the show as well. He's got his English sarcasm going here. It's a good thing Russia didn't lowball the bid for the next round of BC ferries based on David Eby's defense Tuesday that his government ultimately wants to go with the fastest, cheapest boats possible, no matter where the public dollars go. There you go.
Or what about Iran? Or what if Hamas had a side gig in making ferries, manufacturing ferries in Gaza, and they put in a low bid? There's just there's no moral consistency. There's no moral seriousness to David Eby's position on this. And I think he should be more concerned. He seems to be kind of slacking off. He's not taking it very seriously. For people that are paying attention, and Rob Shaw is absolutely one of those people. If you listen to the way Rob Shaw was speaking to him at that press conference yesterday, I think it was, he was clearly almost like emotional about it. He's so frustrated about it. There are people that are watching this and they're thinking like, this is a disgrace. What are you doing? Where are your principles? And Eby kind of presents himself, that's his USP, because he was a lawyer for the BC Civil Rights Association, wasn't he? It was all about principle, apparently. That's who David Eby's supposed to be. But where are the principles?
And then those pots on the stoves that are boiling over, we have the BC Ferry pot. And then obviously the health crisis pot that's just blowing over. And Eleanor Sturko, an MLA for Conservatives as well, has been beating this drum. And now she's got the Victoria business owners airing their grievances to the mayor and the police chief. There's these drug policies here in British Columbia, these, you know, like these, the NDP pro-drug, anti-police policies, and the businesses in Victoria have had enough.
Yeah.
Have you been to Victoria and seen it? I've been there recently, and it's not a pretty sight. So
I haven't been recently. I mean, the last time I went, it was just full of tourists, hippies, and seniors, which I think is that was the balance, wasn't it? That's how it used to work. Yeah. But now, and it's purely a policy thing, isn't it? Now it's got all kinds of new problems, and it's all about having the kind of guts as well. It requires like steel, pun intended. It requires guts, doesn't it, to fix an issue like this? Because compassion is easy. If you're just compassionate, then you just let things just degrade, and then you get to retain your compassion and feel good about yourself. That's easy to do. What's hard is to have guts and to make difficult decisions to fix things.
To add stuff to the fire, the Alberta, that separatist movement, is putting out ads of talking about this utopia Alberta, and talking about how, like, you know, like they're doing in the future Alberta, like 5-6 years from now, and saying like we can walk the streets and stuff like that, and this is another example of these policies. The Global put out this story: a Surrey man's acquittal of sexual assault charge because he was high on magic mushrooms is sparking outrage. So that's all you have to say. Oh well, you know, hey.
It's worth reading that story. It's absolutely surreal. It's like taking magic mushrooms. Just reading that story, how he woke up, took the mushrooms or something, and then he said he felt like he just absolutely had to have sex with the first woman that he saw or something like that. It's just absolutely crackers, absolutely mad.
And then I did watch something, I think it was in the UK, where they were interviewing a guy that raped a young girl there, and he said, well, she just looked too good.
Yeah, well, there's also the infamous sexual emergency that excuse was used once in Germany, I think. Germany or Austria, and I think it was an asylum seeker from Syria. And I think he actually got off with that excuse that he had a sexual emergency and he just had to like rape a child. Outrageous.
I actually had a thought on this, and then I saw Kenneth Chan from the Daily Hive put out this post. Vancouver City Council has endorsed Mayor Kinson's push to explore a property tax increase as low as 0 for 2026. And my thought was, I should run for city council here and make them go for a 0 tax increase, because every year they just think they get that automatic 3, 4, 5%, right? And they just keep going every year, instead of saying, let's go for 0. Like, let's cut back.
And it's such a massive sum of money, isn't it? And in crazy. Vancouver, God knows what they're paying in Vancouver. I'm guessing it gets pretty huge in Vancouver, given the price of the houses there. But it's like several $1,000s for most people. That's just insane, isn't it? When you think like to get your garbage collected every now and then, it's hard to justify.
And then Vancouver's Trutch Street is named, and I can't pronounce it, so I'm gonna I don't know.
Well, what I would say is, don't worry that you can't pronounce it, because that's kind of the point, isn't it? I think the point is that you can't pronounce it, because it's just pushing it in your face, isn't it? It's just saying, look at that.
If you live on that street, forget about your Amazon or skip the dishes deliveries, because they'll never find it. We're going to move on, though, because we're running a little behind here. The markets are closed in the United States. The bond and stock markets are closed. We're in our market segment here because it's Juneteenth, National Independence Day there in the United States of America. United States of America. But nearly half of Canada's national public pension plan, guess where it's invested? United States.
Could well be the United States, yeah.
And only 12% in Canada, so a lot of faith in Canada there, right? And then, like talking about this is what I mean. It's all talk at the podium and all bullshit when it comes down to the actual things. And the U.S. Fed, even after Donald Trump's belittling of Jerome Powell, he left the interest rates unchanged But he does see 2 cuts coming this year, and I do believe they're going to be cutting here. And a little more market news there. Airbus dominates at the Paris Air Show, and I'm sure that Boeing crash didn't help there. But Airbus taking you're a big fan of the Airbus, right?
I'm not necessarily a fan of Airbus, but there are two major airline or aircraft producers, civilian aircraft producers, Airbus and Boeing, and I just think Airbus is so much better than Boeing. It's like, I just find it funny that they're ever even put in the same category.
Well, I guess we
and
should.
Airbus is partly manufactured in Canada, so we should be patriotic about it.
The markets are relatively muted as it's a holiday in the United States. Everything is kind of relatively muted. Gold is muted as well. Everything is just kind of, everybody's like, most of the money transactions happens in the United States. Gold's up like $4. Silver, still hanging around that $37 mark there, but it's actually just under there, 36, 32, but still high for silver. And then Bitcoin, again, hanging in there at that $104,000 mark. So everything is kind of just hanging in there. But the oil has been reacting. So West Texas Intermediate is now $77 a barrel, and that's with that more stuff going on. So oil climbing for sure, and even Western Canadian Select at 61.15. Good for Alberta, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Good for Alberta.
Yeah, I guess so.
In our technology and transportation section, big explosion there on the SpaceX launch pad there yesterday. We're going to play a small clip there.
Yeah, probably. I mean, even the other day when they... Whoa!
What? That's
no!
Oh my God. It appears.
There you go. They were test firing. I think it was they were test firing the ship, and it blew up on the pad. Nobody was injured. Everybody was cleared of the area. So they were about to test fire the engine. So there you go.
Pretty good commentary there, wasn't it, from that fellow?
This we talked about yesterday, and I wanted to play it. This is so important. This is Sam Altman being interviewed by his brother on his podcast there. Look at his, there's some brother envy there, right? One's killing it and one's doing a podcast. I'm going to play a small clip here from Sam Altman here talking about Meta going after his employees.
Can I ask you about the whole Meta scale thing?
Of course.
So what's the situation there?
Look, I've heard that Meta thinks of us as their biggest competitor. And, I think it is rational for them to keep trying. Their current AI efforts have not worked as well as they've hoped. And I respect being aggressive and continuing to try new things. And again, given that I think this is rational, I expect that if this one doesn't work out, they'll keep trying new ones after that. I remember once hearing Zuck talk about how, Google in the early days of Facebook, it was rational for them to try social, even though it was clear to people at Facebook that was not going to work. And I feel a little bit similar here, but they started making these giant offers to, a lot of people on our team, $100 million signing bonuses, more than that comp per year.
It's crazy.
And it is crazy. I'm really happy that at least so far, none of our best people have decided to take them up on that. I think that people sort of look at the
Why would you not go and take $100 million to work for Mark Zuckerberg?
If you listen to the whole thing, it's important to listen to the full podcast there. One of the reasons is that they don't believe, what Sam is saying there, they don't believe Meta is going to be successful. And they think that's how big they think OpenAI is going to become. That it's better to stay with OpenAI than to go there, even if it is for $100 million. They think they become they just think Meta is going to fail. Just like when he said when Google started doing, what was it called? Google Places, or what was it called? Google launched something, My Google, or I can't remember. They launched a competitor.
Circles, do you mean?
No, it was something, they launched a competitor to Facebook. And everybody started.
Wasn't it called Circles? I think it was called Circles.
Google Places or Google Faces. I don't know what it was, but it was that good.
Google Plus.
There you go. It was
Google
that
plus
good.
circles. Yeah, I think. Okay.
It was that good. It didn't do anything, right? And
it was a disaster, that wasn't it? It was terrible.
And then there you go. So, but the point is, this is how big AI is. This is how monstrous it is. It's just absolutely monstrous, right? So, and then another one here. I listened to this, A Diary of a CEO. He's actually pretty good if you get a chance to go listen to him. The podcast is all about it, right? So like this podcast of, I think it's Jack Altman, like his brother. I can't remember his name now, but it's Sam Altman, obviously, and his brother. And the podcasts are doing well, just like what we're doing right here. This is going to be huge. This is going to be bigger than the National someday. If you just keep following and sharing, this will be bigger than the National because we're telling the truth here. And we actually tell it with a little bit of sense of humor. But the godfather of AI says there's only a few jobs are safe, and I'm an accountant, and it says that one's gone. Accountants, lawyers, bankers, anything you're doing in front of a computer, really.
Yeah, and it's starting to get to. It looks like blue collar are probably going to be the safest, really, doesn't it? Whereas there was a certain amount of gloating, almost, wasn't there, from white collar professionals about this. But it turns out that their jobs are quite easy to automate, especially extremely expensive lawyers, which don't think anybody will be particularly sad about.
And then Brett says, thanks for that nice comment. Brett says, millions of Canadians should be watching this show across Canada, and I agree. If you can help us get it out there, I'm sure if we could get it out to a larger audience and beat these algorithms. They took away our audience of 200,000. That's what we keep fighting to get back. That would be huge for us if we could get our audience back off Meta. And imagine what this show would be like if we could get this on our platform of 200,000 with Meta. And we're starting from a hole here with YouTube and our X account. And if you could help us share it, that'd be appreciated. But yeah, we're going to keep trying. We're going to keep plugging away. This is a little clip we're going to play from because the robotaxi is supposed to launch here, I think, in a couple days. And there's some test cases out there. And this is a small clip from a robotaxi operating in Austin with nobody in the room. Yeah, no music. Yeah. There you go. That's good enough. So there's nobody in the driver's seat there, but there you go. And then this is Melissa Landsman here. She's just saying the Liberal plan to outlaw gas cars in a decade magically built 700,000 new charging stations. We only have about 60,000 right now. Fork over billions we don't have. Kill 38,000 auto sector jobs and pretend it's everyone's dying wish to buy a Tesla. Well, I got news for you, Melissa. They don't even want you to buy a Tesla because they put 25% tariffs on Tesla. So just correct your tweet there and also add into there, and they won't even let you buy the best electric vehicle there is made in the world. So there you go. Add that. And just to show you how...
utopianism, really, isn't it? And I imagine that's what the rest of her tweet must say there. It's not policy, it's wishful thinking or something like that. Because that's kind of what it is. It is a utopian vision of the very near future.
One of the most important people in AI and one of the leaders or the CEOs, one of the multi-trillion-dollar companies, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said Tesla Optimus is likely the next multi-trillion-dollar industry. And he called Elon Musk an extraordinary engineer and said Optimus could change everything. And I think, and he also said at one point that the real world application of AI belongs to Tesla. And I believe that Tesla is probably one of the most important companies out there. On the negative side of Tesla, I think it could become Skynet. On the positive side, it could change the world for the better. So there you go.
I assume he has stock in Tesla. He certainly likes to talk it up, doesn't he?
I don't think he needs a lot of stock. NVIDIA CEO is multi-billion dollars rich. He loves his leather jacket, though. Everywhere he goes, he wears that leather jacket. That's his trademark. You remember Steve Jobs had the turtleneck. He wore that same black turtleneck there because he didn't want to make decisions on what to wear every day. So he just wore the same black turtleneck. Not the same one, but he just had many of them, right? So he said...
Just like Homer Simpson.
Yeah. Well, he had so many decisions that he had to make, and he didn't want one of those to be deciding on what he was going to wear that day.
Well, it became his trademark, didn't it? And quite a few people have that kind of thing going on. Like Justin Trudeau's socks, for example. Bit less successful with that, though.
Yeah, a bit less successful, yeah. And then we got our new section, health. We got our new section in health, and here's RFK Jr., love him or hate him. Yesterday, he met with the Starbucks CEO who shared the company's plans to further its MAHA, Make Americans Healthy Again, on its menu. Pleased to learn Starbucks food and beverages already avoids artificial dyes, artificial flavors, and high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, and other. This one I have a tough time with because they also sell a lot of sugar. They sell, like most of their drinks are just laden with sugar.
Yeah, and they're also, I think when you do the comparisons of like caffeine content, they're usually like crazy high as well.
Yeah,
so they just like fill you full of everything, don't they? Really, just give you a buzz in any way they can.
They make your eyes feel wonky. I know when I used to drink like the double espresso, when you needed it, that my eyes would actually feel wonky. But I never tried to commit any misdeeds and claim that I was high on caffeine or anything.
You're lost, really.
Probably wouldn't work. And then this one here is the other one in our health section. And a lot of people push this creatine and saying that it really helps you with and I'll have to admit that I do take creatine every day. And it does help in my mind. So
well, I don't even know what that is. Isn't that the stuff that is in protein shakes?
They put it in there, yeah. Yeah. Creatine's an organic compound. It's basically protein kind of thing. So yeah, so it's a lot of people really are adamant that it's good for you. So do your own research. There's tons of it out there on creatine. A lot of doctors and that say creatine is one supplement that they do recommend, and it's recommended for lots of women as well because they're lacking in certain areas, right? So it's kind of a gritty fine powder, white powder.
So apparently you get it through seafood and red meat usually. Quite an expensive thing to get naturally.
There you go. And then this one here is just the color of food, and just a health reminder for people. You got this one? No, maybe. No, we don't got it. The color of food, colorful plates, and this is like the vegetables are brightly colored, and your eggs and that. Eggs are the super magic food. I eat about 4 to 6 eggs a day. It is the magic food. I've lost 60 pounds about 6 years ago and kept it off, and I'm putting on muscle at my age, and it's just amazing. And here we are into the best part of the show, I think. Are you serious? The fool of the day and that, but we're going to first this is the old Wizard of Oz, and when Dorothy questions the Scarecrow, how do you talk without a brain? There you go. And then here's our contender for Fool of the Day. To build the strongest economy in G7, we have to catalyze. Make sure you always use that word. That's his new word.
Yeah, they love that word, don't they?
Catalyze. That's like, you've never heard that word. I bet you if you could get AI to go and look and how many times the liberals use the word catalyze since Carney was there, and now catalyze has got to come up in most of their tweets. Catalyze is huge for them, right?
If you go on Google Trends, maybe that would help you see if it's just suddenly exploded in popularity. It's because they're so impressionable, aren't they? And they just hear these things, and it's like they're at school. It's like, and they just start using the words, don't they?
And they just got to figure out how to work that in. And then one of the things that didn't disappear with Justin Trudeau gone is the photo ops. They love a good photo op. Photo op, right?
Yeah.
And this one here with Francois.
Having a pint with Keir Starmer.
Yeah, this one here with Francois there with his arm draped over the chair there, and looking very catalyzed.
He's looking as if he's like the boss there, isn't he? And he's in his little, in his little Berber tent.
And then you talked about J.D. Vance, and here is Vice President J.D. Vance was permanently suspended from Blue Sky less than 20 minutes because he put out this post that just set up my page, hope to see you guys there, and that's the end of J.D. Vance.
What's funny is that was a gamble from Vance, because he must have thought, this is funny, they're going to ban me, and it'll kind of prove a point about how insular the left is, or has become. And he's done it, and it's kind of like Blue Sky just walked right into it, didn't they? Walked right into that trap. They don't seem to realize that they could have like won this round. They could have won this battle by letting them stay. Then it would have made his point look, moot.
Do you remember Mark Cuban? A far lefter, left X is calling it a cesspool, and was going to Blue Sky and hoping to attract everybody to go to Blue Sky with him. Turns out he's back on X, and he says blue sky is just a echo chamber.
It's too. You can't. Nothing can be interesting when it's that constrained. No, you can't have an intellectual discussion with people that just agree with you 100% of the time. That's not fun, is it? You don't learn anything either. It's just a waste of time.
And this is a fun poke at the French, because this is Netanyahu asking Macron for help, and France saying, we won't help you attack. I just need you to show us how to surrender. Show them how to surrender.
The French, they take a lot of abuse for that, don't they?
And then this one here, because the Edmonton Oilers lost again. And here's a little clip here from, and this has got to be updated here, but here's a clip here from Governor DeSantis talking about hockey.
Here from Canada, and he said in his email, leaving a question, that he's one of the people who drives every year and winters in Florida, lives in Halifax apparently, is there for the summer, and he just wanted to ask his favorite American governor his opinion on his least favorite Canadian Prime Minister, Trudeau.
So all I can say is this. Justin Trudeau, since he has been Prime Minister of Canada, number of Stanley Cups for Canada, 0. Governor Ron DeSantis, number of Stanley Cups for the state of Florida since I've been governor, 3. Who's winning that battle?
And the update is 4.
Yeah. Although I don't know how much we can blame that on the Liberal Party, but yeah.
Oh. Again, this is in our not so serious section, so not so serious.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Well, fool of the day, come on. You have to decide.
Well, I'm going with Francois-Philippe Champagne. Like he's a tough guy to knock off that podium today, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm racking my brains. I'm trying to think of somebody else, but it has to be Champagne. But it's not fair, is it? Because every time he's in there, either Champagne or Jolie, it's just not fair. People can't compete against that level, that level of foolishness. But credit where it's due, he's the fool.
I honestly didn't think we could find somebody more incompetent than Chrystia Freeland as the finance. But they proved me wrong, right? They proved me wrong.
I think it's something to do because Chrystia Freeland, it seemed like she was kind of crippled by insecurity, and she looked like she was always having a battle with herself, like almost like she was suffering from imposter syndrome or something like that, and you could see it play out. Whereas Champagne is the opposite. He just goes in and he thinks that he's Isaac Newton, doesn't he? It's like, we're going to do everything, we're great. It's just, it adds another dimension to the incompetence, I think.
My biggest problem with Mrs. Freeland is that her saying after that she didn't really agree with all those decisions. But I mean, and then she neglected her duties because she was second in command and also finance minister. She was a deputy prime minister and finance minister. So she's saying she kowtowed to Justin Trudeau. That's not being responsible to those two positions. She should be responsible to Canada first, not to the prime minister. That's where she neglected her duties, and that's where she should be held to account for that, and she should hold herself to account for that. And I think that's
if you believe her if you believe that that's true, that she disagreed with Trudeau. I mean, I'm not 100% certain about that.
So where does that leave her then? Then she's either a liar, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So one of the two is not very flattering, right? So you have to pick your poison, Mrs. Freeland, and come clean with Canadians.
But does she though? Because I mean, she's been demoted a little bit, but she's still one of the most powerful people in Canada. It's not like she's been fired or anything like that. It's not like she's really been held to account. So,
Mark,
I don't know. She's kind of getting the last laugh, isn't she?
One of the things with the Carney Liberals is that they've kind of assembled, and you would think, it's because they're competent, but they assembled a group of people that were castaways or were thrown out because like Mendocino was recycled, Gerald Butts was back, and all these people were shamed. Evan Solomon, he was fired from CBC, and all of a sudden he gets this position as and we just talked about $100 million asked for an employee. One of the most important industries right now in Canada is given to Evan Solomon.
We should actually be aware of that and try and put up our defenses, because Meta might try and headhunt Evan Solomon with one of those $100 million bounties.
I'm gonna say he's probably safe, or that the government is safe.
Yeah, we're safe. We're safe. Canada's safe.
I'm gonna say that he's safe. That I've listened to him talk on AI, and yeah, I don't think that they have much to worry about there. But like
maybe we do.
And it's sad that the Parliament's going to go on holidays here, take a break from their hard work of nothing being accomplished and delivering that tax cut that Francois Philippe Champagne says that they don't want to table a budget because they're busy working to deliver that tax cut that was promised to Canadians. Well, overpromised, underdelivered. So obviously you have time for the budget then, Francois.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But they've got hard work to do to bring down the GDP per capita even lower. It's not easy to do that consecutively, quarter after quarter. That's pretty tough to do. So.
And then if we look at the ties of the interference in the Chinese election here in Canada that Sam Cooper's talking about, and now you look at our multi-billion-dollar deal goes to China for building ferries, and now we're using Chinese steel to build bridges. What is the connection here, with China and the BC NDP?
Goodness knows. I mean, certainly we should say we don't have there is no evidence, but it's certainly true. We do have evidence and corroboration from the federal government and various institutions that China does interfere. No. But we don't know about any sort of link with the NDP I mean, I think it's more interesting with the Liberals because they have actively tried to get the Liberals elected. So there is actually a question to be asked there.
Well, I think we're going to see if we can ask some more questions. We're going to see if we can get some more people on here. Again, I did that interview with, I think that'll go up today here, with MLA Macklin McCall. That's his first long-form interview too, and he enjoyed it. He said that the podcast to me, the long-form interviews are the way to do it. And we did 3 MLAs just recently, though, in our riding here. We did Gavin Dew, we've done him many times, and then our first one with Christine Lowen, and then our first one now with Macklin McCall. And I've asked Stephen Fuhr multiple times for an interview, and he doesn't even respond to my email, so obviously.
Well, he is quite, in his defense, I suppose, he's a rather busy gentleman now, as he is in cabinet, but yeah. Be good to speak to him.
He has people that answer his emails, though, doesn't he? Anyway.
Indeed, yeah.
Anyway, that's our show. We're back tomorrow with our final show of the week. We're on at 9 a.m., and we look forward to chatting with you then. I'm Jim Check, and with me, Ian Burns, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
We don't just report the news. We live here, too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.